We were down to nothing. Stripped away, the high was barely buzzing.
Hello, it's Sei. The term communication skill has become quite popular, hasn't it? On the flip side, we also hear the term communication disability quite often. In my case, when I hear the word communication, what comes to mind is chit-chat skills, whether it's with someone I just met, colleagues at work, bosses, or clients, in those 5 to 10 minutes of idle time or during negotiations, meetings, and conferences, deliberately starting with small talk to create a friendly atmosphere becomes necessary. I've always considered my chit-chat skills a challenge. Am I good at small talk? To address this, I'd like to introduce a book today titled The First Class, Second Class, and Third Class of Chit-Chat. What's interesting about this book is that it explains how to engage in small talk in various scenarios, categorizing it into 3 levels: third class, second class, and first class. It's very easy to understand, and you can quickly grasp the techniques that can be applied in practical situations. Personally, I think even second-class chit-chat skills are impressive, and the techniques for first-class small talk are truly valuable. And that's the impression I got. For those who want to acquire genuine chit-chat skills, I recommend reading this book. However, this time I'll introduce 4 techniques from the book that I immediately thought of trying out. They are very useful, so please stay tuned until the end. This author was originally a salesperson and reportedly was suddenly demoted due to poor sales performance. However, after engaging in small talk with clients in the new position, they managed to become the top performer in sales. I thought, is this for real? But it seems that they are currently active as an instructor teaching communication skills, thus having understood the challenges of communication more than anyone else and being well aware of the importance of communication. I am convinced that they have achieved such practical success through established patterns. Without further ado, let me introduce them to you. First, let's talk about the opening line in small talk. Small talk, of course, begins with the first few words. Take a moment to reflect. How do you usually start a casual conversation? Isn't it common to begin with a discussion about the weather? Something like, "Good morning, it's hot today," right? I used to do this a lot. In fact, it seems quite basic. However, just saying "it's hot" is considered third rate. So, what's second rate? It's adding another piece of information to the "it's hot" like this. "It's hot. It's going to be over 30 degrees. They say, I often do this too. And you might think it's sufficient, but it's still considered second rate. Now, what about first rate? Those skilled in small talk always direct the arrow of the conversation towards the other person and set a topic that the other person finds easy to talk about. For example, "It's hot. It's going to be over 30 degrees. They say, how about you? Are you okay with the summer heat?" Starting by focusing on the other person. Think about it. When you took a group photo at school or elsewhere, didn't you always check your own picture first? Even if you have a crush or a friend in the photo. So you instinctively look for yourself first. It's because you are the most important to yourself. Therefore, by centering the initial small talk on the other person, the conversation smoothly begins. Additionally, everyone prefers talking over listening, so this approach tends to work well. Starting and sustaining small talk can be quite a challenge, especially with someone you've just met. It's difficult to choose a topic when there's a little information available. This challenge is even more pronounced when there's a generational gap. It's not only in initial encounters, even in relationships at the acquaintance level, it can be awkward. Particularly in workplace interactions, you might know names, departments, and approximate ages, but not much more. When you find yourself alone with such individuals, it can be uncomfortably awkward. Initiating a conversation to improve the atmosphere is a common approach, but figuring out how to keep it going is another hurdle. Some individuals, categorized as third-rate, tend to fall silent, giving up on the conversation if they lack the confidence to continue. If they don't feel assured about sustaining their conversation, they might choose not to engage in it at all. This tendency is quite common. Nowadays, with the prevalence of mobile phones, people often use them to escape from social discomfort, pretending to make calls, send messages, read books, or start listening to music to avoid this need to engage. While this can be an effective way to exit the immediate situation, it may also mean missing out on an opportunity to establish a connection. For those who genuinely want to build a relationship, seizing the chance to engage is crucial. In such situations, many people make an effort to find new topics. This ability to navigate conversations is considered a more advanced skill, often referred to as second-rate. Wow, that's impressive. Initiating a conversation and actively seeking topics to talk about is a significant step, especially for someone perceived as having social challenges. Even with such effort, it might be considered sufficient. However, when you try to see it from the other person's perspective, it becomes evident that they are aware of your effort, and while they appreciate the attempt, it doesn't feel entirely comfortable. In fact, it might make them want to leave the situation. That's why I recommend connecting the conversation naturally from the previous topics rather than forcefully searching for new ones. The theory makes sense. Indeed, abruptly changing to a new topic can create an awkward atmosphere, and continuing from the previous conversation is more natural. However, since not everyone can do this easily, there's a tendency for people to actively seek new topics, even though it might not be a most comfortable approach. The key at this moment lies in the use of conjunctive particles and the preparatory expressions. I'll introduce two ideal preparatory expressions that seamlessly expand on the previous conversation. 1. そうそう、その話で思い出したんだけど。By the way, that reminds me. Second, そういえば。Speaking of which, I'll proceed to introduce the effectiveness of each in order. First, そうそう、その話で思い出したんだけど。By the way, that reminds me is an amazing preparatory expression that allows you to change the topic while still acknowledging the previous conversation. It works by taking a common element from the preceding discussion and steering the conversation in a new direction. For instance, after initiating the conversation with a weather-related opening, When you want to expand the topic, you can smoothly transition by saying something like そうそう、その話で思い出したんだけど、最近の気温の高さでアイスを食べる機会が増えまして、改めてバニラアイスの美味しさにびっくりしたんですけど、あなたは何味のアイスがお好きですか？ By the way, that reminds me, with the recent high temperatures, I've been eating more ice cream lately, and I was surprised again by the deliciousness of vanilla ice cream. What flavor of ice do you like? However, it's essential to use it sparingly, as overuse may create an awkward atmosphere. The second expression, そういえば, or speaking of which, is similar to the earlier そうそう、その話で思い出したんだけど or by the way, that reminds me. In that, it allows you to shift the conversation to a different topic. If you've already changed the topic with そうそう、その話で思い出したんだけど but find yourself stuck again, you can use そういえば to reset the conversation. For example, continuing from the previous example of liking strawberry flavored ice cream. If the conversation does naturally progress, you can introduce そういえば with something like そういえば最近は日本のアイスって外国でも評判ですって。最近そういえばどこか行かれました？ Speaking of which, I heard Japanese ice cream is gaining popularity abroad. Have you been anywhere interesting lately? This provides a fresh start to a new conversation. While occasionally lacking coherence in the context, the comfort in small talk is crucial. So, the specific content may not be important. The next point in the conversation to be introduced is finding something to compliment. Have you ever had the experience of chatting with a customer, having the opportunity to create a positive atmosphere by complimenting them, trying to find something to compliment in order to be liked, but not be able to find anything? In such situations, you may either give up and just listen to the other person, or desperately search for topics to discuss. I've been there. This book teaches how to find things to compliment. By the way, those in the third tier give up because they cannot find anything to compliment. Those in the second tier forcibly search for something to compliment. It seems like both approaches are not ideal. So, how does someone in the first tier find something to compliment? They find it by comparing to the past. They seek out what to compliment by comparing to what the person was like before. People inevitably undergo some changes when compared to the past. You compliment those changes. The only action you need to take for this is to ask, what were you doing before? It's about obtaining information from the past. By acquiring past information, you can emphasize the apparent excellent points that are currently visible. Complimenting the differences allow you to actively praise, and since the person has experienced it, they are more likely to acknowledge, even unconsciously, maybe I'm doing something great. So, the final point in the introduced conversation is the last words in small talk. Recall what was the goal and the purpose of the small talk. It was to provide a pleasant environment, build a relationship with the other person, and further create a desire to meet again. Achieving this is possible with the last word in small talk. I want everyone to reflect on how they have been concluding small talk until now. Perhaps you are just ending with simple greeting like well then, see you again. Unfortunately, this is a third-rate last words. Adding expressions of gratitude such as thank you or sharing impression like it was enjoyable meeting you is a step up I used to do this too, but regrettably, it's still second rate. So, what about the first rate last words? It involves conveying a specific, memorable episode from the conversation. For example, expressing the story about dumpling you shared today was really fresh. Since I also love dumplings, I might end up laughing when I remember it next time I eat them. By conveying a point from the conversation as feedback, you satisfy the need for acknowledgement. They really listen to my story, leaving a positive impression and making the other person want to meet again. It doesn't matter if the highlighted point is not crucial to the other person. Just knowing that someone listened, cared, is considering their words is incredibly satisfying. In this session, I've introduced first-rate tips for small talk that you can use immediately. I hope you found them insightful as presented. This book not only covers these 4 tips, but also provides interesting and humorous insights tailored to various situations. Mastering small talk is the key to mastering sales. This is my personal belief, but I genuinely feel that creating the right atmosphere through small talk is crucial. Thank you for watching this video until the end. Bye, see you next time.